Grooming. That's when grooming comes into the story, when there's lack of opportunities. Like we've got a young person, high level of testosterone, lots of energy, lots of desires, but there isn't opportunities. Then comes the experienced people who groom younger boys to hunt them down. I was seeing him coming back wearing new tracksuits, which I know we couldn't afford to buy that at that time. At some point, driving a car, myself and my husband were now feeling paralyzed. It just felt like things are out of control. I saw him laying down and his t-shirt was ripped, covered in blood. And I saw 7, 8 times when he was stabbed in his back. Between the day he got stabbed and the day he got involved in the stabbing, there were 4 days.
Wow, okay.
4 days. Last day, I booked an emergency appointment to go and see my GP, and I asked my GP to section him. He is traumatized. He is being brainwashed still. Something horrible is going to happen. Can you please section my son? That was the sentencing day, and that's when the judge set the minimum of 22 years. And as he said that, then I started crying like I lost my son. That's exactly what it felt like. I was just calling his name, just in case that my lips will forget how to say the name. And between 2016 to 2017, that's how long I took to do nothing apart from crying. So 1 year on, I needed to take responsibility and do something meaningful with my pain. I haven't come across someone in my position, the monster side, the baddie side, to come up and speak. People don't understand what prison life is like. They come up with the things of lock them in and throw the key away, and they are criminals and they are a waste of time and space. Understanding that our children go on their paths, no matter which direction it's going to go, it's important that they know they are loved, they are protected, they are respected, and we are there for them. You don't deal with human mistakes by putting them in cages. You protect people 100%. And when some of these people lose their path, you help them to find the path.
Today we are joined by Dunia, a mother whose personal story of loss has become a powerful mission of hope and transformation. After her teenage son was groomed into a gang and became involved in fatal stabbing, Dunia made the heart-wrenching decision to turn him in. He's now serving a 22-year life sentence. But Dunia's story doesn't end in grief. It begins a new chapter on purpose. She has channeled her pain into powerful advocacy, working inside prisons to support rehabilitation and helping incarcerated men rediscover their humanity, purpose and potential. Dunia is passionate about prevention, equipping parents with the tools to spot signs of grooming and help families navigate crisis before it becomes tragedy. Through her work, she reminds us that no one is beyond redemption and that hope, even in the darkest places, can rebuild lives and reshape futures. Welcome, Dunia. You're listening to the Higher Playing Field podcast, where we reimagine education for Black children, one conversation at a time. This is a space for truth, strategy and vision, where parents, teachers and change makers speak honestly about the challenges in our schools. We spotlight excellence, uncover hidden wisdoms and map out a new blueprint for our children's success, one that protects their potential and transforms our whole community. I met you at a women's leadership forum that I'm a part of. I was quite taken by your story. It's a story that I recognise. within our community. It's a story that many of my peers are living through. I admired your ability to take a moment that is absolutely crushing and create hope out of it. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us on Higher Playing Field. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background? How did you end up here?
So I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for the kind introduction, Desna. Likewise, I was very inspired by your share on that first time we met. I remember I was crewing, and then I was in tears when I was listening to you. So thank you so much for having me and for all the work that you do. And a little bit about what was the journey like for me to be here. I'd say it was just no normal family formation. Me coming to the UK, marrying my husband, and gradually the family growing. We have 4 children and 1 grandson. I was getting used to this new country, new culture, learning English. I was always passionate about education. So I've done a degree and a master's degree in youth and community work. My hope and my vision for the family was going towards a different direction. My eldest at that time was about 17, 18. I was hoping that he will finish his course and gradually find employment while the other ones were gradually growing up as well. And yeah, the family was getting bigger. I was hoping to find full-time employment for myself, but life chose. It just happened. On one hand, things were happening so fast, so quickly, that it's taking me years still to process and understand and come in terms with it. And on the other hand, no, it was obvious. Maybe if I could call it from heart level, from a mother's perspective, I was feeling things. But resource-wise, things were very limited.
So tell us about that then. Let's deeply dive into that, because I love what you've said about being a mother. And I think we're in a culture here where sometimes we are severed from our intuition.
Yeah.
So in terms of what you felt, what was it that you were feeling? What were the changes that you were observing as a mum at that point?
The biggest change was from the point when my eldest son finished his primary school education and started secondary. At that time, we were providing him with private tuition, buying all the books he needs for revision. He sat the Trinity School test and he passed the paper test, and we were hoping that he will get a grade which entitled him to get the bursary. That didn't happen, and as a result, he was attending a state secondary school. And then things were really shifting. It felt like my son was getting exposed to a bigger world. He was seeing more people, being introduced to new things. And it was that phase of exploring. And as a mom, that's when I was feeling like safety, the rag of safety is gradually getting pulled away from my feet. It was like detention, next time a longer detention. So on one hand, this mother part of me was worried. On the other hand, this logical mind of me was saying, he's a teenager. Detention is something they will have to experience. It's character building, it's learning responsibilities. There was this conflict, this inner conversation. By the time he finished secondary school and he started college, then I felt like my son was very lost. And at this point, I had my last 2 children, and this is one of the things that I would love for parents to hear from me. As a mother, we do our best for our children. But we don't understand when a new child is coming, how is that impacting the other children? And in particular, when they are in their teenage years, on one level, we might think that they are not that little, they don't need the same amount of attention from us. And gradually, we will be caring for the very small ones. But in fact, that subconsciously, maybe, it was a hidden message for my son that the focus is not on you anymore. Because for the first 8 years, he was the first child. For the first 8 years, he was the only child. For another 8 years, they were only two boys. So gradually, with having these other new children, something has shifted from the energy of the house. And somehow that made him feel like he's not a priority anymore. This is what was happening at home. What was happening with education, he was doing NVQ level 1 carpentry course, and there was this sense of masculinity kind of flourishing even more, and he wanted to go out there and work, and he was feeling good about him having dust and muds on him coming back from work and taking a shower. But there was no room for him to flourish even more. Why I'm saying this, because when he started the next level of his training course and he completed that, he was then very excited applying for jobs. At some points, he was borrowing trainers and shirts from his cousin to dress up in a smarter way and attend interviews. The amount of interviews he was getting in comparison to how many applications he was making was very little. And out of, if I could say, 10 interviews, he would have received one offer, and that one offer was somewhere where he needed to travel 2 hours away. And that was just very discouraging for a young person who's trying to live this experience of being a man and trying to rely on himself and all that meanings attached to masculinity, providing, protecting, earning income, establishing himself, creating a status. That was missing. He was truly struggling with that.
Can we
So
talk through actually this, because I don't want to miss out on those. You've said some really key things in terms of that secondary education. So you've got a child that's gone into secondary education and he starts life in secondary education at a very good academic level, because I know Trinity very well. And I know that it's an incredibly competitive school to get into. Academically, he's very strong academically if he is passing the entry criteria to get into that school. And then during the life of secondary school, what happened to him in terms of the academic strength, in terms of his engagement with education? What was, because what I'm hearing you say is he's walked into a space where there are perhaps certain influences. But I'd like to really understand much, much more about that journey of him during secondary school.
thank you for asking that question, because that's where the point, the center of the conflict is. And I think it's very easy still for us to miss it. And somehow it's still easy for the education system, for schools to miss it. It's almost 8 years since what happened, and it's been a daily process of thinking and reflecting and learning and trying to understand and searching for answers. What I can answer, the way I can answer this question, where I am now with my journey of understanding and reflecting, was that he became more interested in exploring and going on these new adventures. And I don't know how this is possible, but this is what was happening. He was being offered to smoke in school. Drugs was introduced to him, bunking and doing the smoking outside of the school. And the amount of encouragement and celebration he was getting for him to get involved in a fight. And it feels because his interest was not on the education side of things, now he was more interested in exploring and going on these new adventures of finding my edges in a different way rather than what grades do I get. The more he was getting belittled in classroom, the more he wanted to show up as a strong figure outside of the classroom.
Did you feel that the teachers ever recognized his academic potential?
This was like 12 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, when he was in secondary school. And I know things gone even more complicated now with the pressure on staff, on teachers, the underfunding. I understand things are even more difficult now. But if we could pump in some resources, some energy into schools, we can save lots of our young people. Because it feels like when a child is not doing good in classroom, and it might be their sense of generalizations, and I'm sorry for this, but this is my experience. That child will get targeted. And then that teacher will share this information with other teachers. And the other teachers will stereotype this child based on what this teacher was saying. Unless you will find the very few teachers who are truly loving their job and who are truly willing to sit down with this child and try to understand what is hurting this young person. And the only example I have for my son was an amazing, beautiful teacher. She was his RE teacher. She was the only one who always believed in him. And can you believe that even now, when I speak with my son, he remembers his French teacher, his geography teacher, and he says, Mom, I hated them. They didn't help. It's not their responsibility to discipline my child or raise up my child. I'm not asking teachers to do my job, but clearly, if certain things being exposed to my son while he's in your care, do your job. It's not just about teaching them the equations and what Napoleon was doing in the World War, blah, blah. That's not a priority for me.
It's that understanding that disenfranchisement helps to move children into spaces where they are unsafe, and we need to try to keep children engaged. And you would think that with what he had already achieved by the time that he got to secondary school, that there would be some focus and some effort put around making sure that he achieves certain outcomes.
He was doing on weekly basis, this was his timetable, piano lessons, karate lessons, swimming lessons. On Saturdays, taking him to Kurdish school and his private tuition at home. At the age of 9 or 10, I can't remember exactly now, 9 or 10, he wrote a letter to the MP asking the MP to do better quality of work to keep the hygiene level in the restaurants in Croydon up to a higher standard because there was lots of problems around that area. For a child 9, 10 years old to do that, I think it speaks volume about his character. And the MP wrote back to him and said, I am inspired by your awareness, and I look forward to see you as a politician in the future.
Yeah. Okay. And so by the time he got to then GCSE level 16, did he get the results that you were expecting academically?
No,
Right.
things were going the wrong direction.
Even before then?
Yeah. As soon as he entered year 7, things were shifting. He was a different child from year 6. But then by GCSE, the label was on him. The sense of belonging was gone. That discomfort feeling from him towards teachers, from teachers toward him, was there all the time.
Yeah.
And I remember he didn't even go to pick up his GCSE because he knew what he was expecting.
Right.
And that was very disappointing because when you compare that to what he has achieved at his primary stage within 3 years, that was a big turn.
Okay. So you described some of the early signs, detentions at school, bunking off from school. Could you see in also his social circle, some of his friends, that there were
Yeah,
challenges happening, problems?
because this new world of adventure was ideas and guidance that were coming from his friends. It felt like he didn't have the skill of choosing a good friend. And honestly, that was the biggest factor for him to be where he is now.
Yeah.
He continued not to know how to choose his friends.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I think to myself, one of the things that I realize even from my time of growing up is that in certain circles, you get a level of encouragement that is different from what you are seeing day to day, sitting in classrooms or even at home. You've got a social circle that will teach you to do things, that believe in you, that hype you up, and on the converse of that, you're going into school where actually the narrative is so negative about, you're sitting in parents' evenings where the narrative is negative. You're sitting in classrooms where you're being told negative things about yourself and your future and your potential. So yeah, sometimes some of those choices are actually fairly easy for young people. Okay. School was challenging, but he still moved on from GCSE to pursue a vocational qualification and was encouraged by what he had chosen. So was obviously enjoying that. But again, hit a wall because not really being prepared for the difficulty of getting into the workforce.
Exactly. Lack of
Yeah.
opportunity. Now, at that stage, lack of opportunity was the biggest challenge. And it's then when he became an easy target to be used by, what's the word? Grooming. That's when grooming comes into the story, when there's lack of opportunities. Like we've got a young person, if we're talking about male, high level of testosterone, lots of energy, lots of desires, but there isn't opportunities. Then comes the experienced people who groom younger boys to hunt them down. And that's exactly what happened with my son. And this is me far away from looking for excuses or trying to blame this and that. I'm just going in order through the different stages and how each phase was unfolding into a separate direction.
Okay, so let's dive into that. Grooming, what did that look like to your intuition?
English basically is my third language, so even learning the word, it took me some time to understand what that means. But what I was seeing and what I was feeling, I was having my son spending longer hours outside with friends. I was seeing him coming back wearing new tracksuits, which I know we couldn't afford to buy that at that time. New iPhone, at some point driving a car, cheap car, but still driving a car. And it felt like at that point, myself and my husband were now feeling paralyzed. It just felt like things are out of control. He's a big boy now, and there is nothing we can do, even though we were still doing what we can do. For example, we used his saving, his childhood saving, to book some sessions and go to family therapist. I remember calling the GP and asking for help, calling another organization called Off the Record, calling different people, and the answer was the same. He's over 18. If he requires help, he's the one who should ask for it. He's an adult. You have no right to talk on his behalf. Yeah. And that was the peak time of seeing the grooming, of seeing the new type of attitude, seeing the new friends. As a mom, when I was seeing him around this group of young people, I always felt some dark smoke surrounding him. I was feeling, and at that time, I wasn't really focused or tuning in to understand what my emotion, what my energy is saying. But definitely, that was something I was feeling, even though I didn't know what it meant.
And then what happened on the lead up to the incident?
So it was August 2016. And as I said, he was spending many hours with this group until one evening I prepared, dinner was on the table. I received a text message from his girlfriend. She said, Ali being chased by 5 people, stabbed a number of times. He's in the hospital, but he's stable. No, actually, I received the phone call. This one was past midnight when I received this call. And straight away, I drove off to the hospital, and I saw him laying down, and his t-shirt was ripped, covered in blood. And I saw 7, 8 times when he was stabbed in his back, but one of them was very deep. And then they did the scanning, and they said he was very lucky. He was 1 inch away from being paralyzed. So he stayed in hospital that night. And I asked him, I said, now what? He said, I will disappear. But knowing him, I knew that's not the truth. So I left early hours in the morning to come back home, and then I went hours later to pick him up from the hospital. And
Can I just get it? When you said, now what? What are the things that happened before that? Because it feels like there were some things that were happening before that. Then
yeah. I was expecting something horrible to happen. I had no understanding about youth, like being involved in things like this. I've done my master's on youth and community work. I understand like socioeconomical factors and certain classes can get impacted, council status, but I never felt it on a personal level. I didn't know what that looks like. But I knew something really bad was going to happen for as long as my son is being around these young people. That's all I knew. The rest of the story, it started to get revealed throughout the trial. That's months later. So yeah, I knew that a disaster is about to happen. And I kept on asking my son to keep distance from these friends. And I kept saying to him that what you are doing is not good. In this day and age, nobody will offer you all of this for free. And he kept on saying, these are my brothers. The stuff that these guys do for me, you and my dad can't do it now because the extent of my needs are higher now. So you can't provide it. These are my brothers, they do it for me. And obviously I was not convinced about it, and I was paralyzed in fear, waiting for something bad to happen.
Right. Okay.
And when it happened, that's when I asked, I said, now what? Now, as if I knew that this was not the end of it.
Right.
And then the next day, when I went to pick him up, he came home. I tried to cook him the type of food that helps him with replacing the amount of blood he lost, like good nutrition. But no, the same friends, they came to pick him up. And he went and spent hours with them. And he came back early morning hours. And I was like, what you doing? And he hugged me and he was so pale and shivering. And he just said, Mom, I just wanted to hug you. I need this. And I was full of anger. I didn't want to hug him. I just wanted him to sit down and talk so he can listen and he can just stay at home and stop going out to these people. But when I hugged him, I just felt how lost this boy was. He was so scared, so needy, so angry, so lost. He was all of that. And between the day he got stabbed and the day he got involved in the stabbing, there were 4 days.
Wow. Okay.
4 days. So on day 1, I picked him up from hospital. On day 2, I contacted few people I knew and they guided me that I need to contact gang team within the police. I spoke to the police. I said, please come and talk to my son. I am sure he knows who done this. He's not going to talk to you. Something worse is going to happen. The police came, 20 minutes conversation, they gone. That was the end of it. The day after, I've contacted some youth organization. If there's something they can do, nothing was available. Last day, I booked an emergency appointment to go and see my GP, and I asked my GP to section him. I said, he lost so much blood. He is not eating. He is not sleeping. He is traumatized. He is being brainwashed still. Something horrible is going to happen. Can you please section my son? Nothing was available. On day 4, around dinner time, I received a text message from his girlfriend saying that a young person was chased and stabbed so many times by a group of young people. Your son was with him. The young boy is dying. And as I read that last word, it just felt like the walls in my sitting room were all covered in red. And then the sense of security was gone. And I remember asking my kids to not sit on the sofa, but sit on the floor. This is because soon later, the news was the young person did unfortunately pass away. So I was expecting attacks. I don't know what I was expecting exactly, but I knew that somebody is going to come and do something about it. And I made sure that they don't sit opposite to the main door in case through the letterbox somebody will try to shoot or put fire or whatever. So there was fear, just fear. And then it was 5 days later when, like this, the next morning, the other 3 were arrested. They were on tags for previous case. My son wasn't. Then apparently we found out that these 3 young people, with this another group of young people, were having a year long of attacks and stabbings. And it's just a question. I don't know where the families were, where the police was, where everybody were, where all these people who showed up in the Old Bailey, where were they when for a year long this problem was ongoing? And then 5 days later, my son was arrested, and it's always hard for me to say this, but the way he was arrested is because myself and my husband decided to give the information to the police so he gets arrested. We didn't know what part he had in this, how much involvement he had in this. He was with them, so he needed to be talked to and go through the legal procedure. And it just felt, it was just, you go along this story, and then you fall down, and you try to pick up yourself a little bit, and you walk a little bit more alongside the stuff that's happening, and you fall down into a deeper level. So there was no room for a pause. There was only, you get used to what's happening now, and then you fall down deeper, and then you get used. And yeah, so that's what it felt like, just a constant rolling down journey.
Wow, that's quite a journey. So tell me about this, the conversation between yourself and your husband at that point where you decide, what are your feelings inside that moment where you know you're about to call the police?
My husband said, this is not a joke. This is very serious because somebody died. And the right thing to do is to let justice to get involved now. So it's in the best interest of everybody that our son goes down the moral path. If he is innocent, it will all reveal. If he played a part in this, then he will have to stand up like a man and pay back for what he did. So that was like the moral compass for my husband. And when I was listening to him, my faith side of the argument was coming in. If we try to play around and not make sure that somehow this young person who ended up in grave, justice is being served for him, we will have to pay back for this very heavily, because God will not allow this to happen. And that's how we came in agreement that this is the next step. And as I was holding the phone in my hand, speaking, dialing the number to speak to the detective and give the address of where, because we didn't know, because my son was not giving us the address. He was being very careful about how much information he was giving us. When I picked up the phone and I was dialing the number to contact the detective and give the information, in that moment, I just made I had a conversation with God. I asked him to be with us the same way. This hand is now taking the action of holding the phone to do the right thing. You are seeing this. Be with us. And yeah. And I said, show us the day when your way, God, your way of saying thank you to us for following the right path, show us that day when you'll say the thank you to us. So yeah, I passed on the information, and the next morning we were getting updated like minute by minute. And they were there, they went, they found the flat, they arrested my son. And then the detective called me from the car. He said, I am a man of my word. I promised you that everything will be done smoothly. There was no resistance. He is a polite guy. We offered him some food. He is now in the van. We are on our way to go to the police station. And as he said that, then I started crying like I lost my son. That's exactly what it felt like. I lost my son. And it took me a while to understand that I haven't really lost him. But that took a very long time because I couldn't understand that how he's there and he's not there. He's part of my life and he's not part of my life. And at some points I remember I was just out of nothing. I was just calling his name just in case that my lips will forget how to say the name. So there is a deep sense of grief and loss. And between 2016 to 2017, that's how long I took to do nothing apart from crying. And I remember it was exactly 1 year later when I just had that realization moment that this is 1 year gone. There's another 21 to come. If you want to sit down and cry, first of all, you're not going to make it. Secondly, you can't tell your son to have faith and have hope. Because if you don't have it, why you expect him to have it? Bear in mind that you are free, you can drive your car, you can open the fridge, you can do your life stuff, you have the Wi-Fi. He doesn't. So 1 year on, I needed to take responsibility and do something meaningful with my pain.
So tell us then about that year. Tell us, how did your son feel initially about what has happened?
I would say anger was the main emotion. He was asking me this question. 5 people are chasing me with knives in their hands. What do you want me to do? Anger towards the friends. Because what happened throughout the trial, they blamed everything on him. One of the things they were saying, yeah, we had a problem 1 year long. It never led to death until Ali joined us. Even though there was lots of stabbings happening. So there was lots of anger. And I think it was just him trying to find how to survive. He only turned 19 when this happened. So how to survive in this world.
So during the trial, what are the things that you discovered about what had actually happened?
I discovered that all of this started over a pair of trainers. That a girl broke up with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend was the main guy in the group where my son became friend with. And because she broke up with this young person, she invited the victim to step in and defend her. So it became like a conflict between two boys. And it just got bigger and bigger and never stopped. And I also learned how lonely this path is and how real it is for moms to feel like there's no support available for them. And you also learn how easy you will start to see who's a real friend, who's a good family member. And then I learned to take responsibility. because that first year, I was just teaching my children, including my son, that when life hits, you stay down on your knee. You can't stand up. But when I turned it around, I felt much better in life. Because life will always have its moment when it will hit. And it's an important skill to pass to your children to stand up again.
Okay. So when he was sentenced, by then, did you expect him to get the sentence that he got?
The most difficult day for me was the verdict day, one day before the sentencing.
Okay.
As soon as the guy stood up from the jury and said the word guilty, I was on freeze mode. I was hearing the other moms yelling, screaming, crying. A fight took place inside the, what is it called, the dome? Because one of the co-defenders looked at my son and called him murderer. And my son stood up to attack him. And then there were 7, 8 security guys separating them. As they were doing that, he looked up, looking at me where I was sitting in the gallery. He said, "I love you, Mom." And he was taken inside. And it just felt like waves of tsunami took my son away from me. And then there was no reaction from me at all, to the level when one of the dads of the co-defenders came and hugged me, as if like he just wanted me to do something. But nothing, no reaction, just numb, completely numb. I don't even know how I managed to find my way to come back home. And I remember it took me half an hour to gradually let my husband know about the outcome.
Okay, so why were you there by yourself?
I was on my own.
Why was that?
My youngest was 2 years old at that time. So the agreement was my husband stays with him because my English is better, so I be there with Ali. I was just like saying things very indirectly, very slowly, so that he can accept it in a less harsher way than what I have been through just 2 hours ago.
Do you think before you attended, did you think about asking for support through that process? Did you ask anybody to go with you?
So usually we were like different family members used to be there. My cousin, my brothers, my sister-in-law. So different members of the family were coming, but I was there every day. And then towards the end is when they allowed the jury to go and take their time until they come back with a decision. And I think they took 9 days. So for 9 days, you be there and nothing is happening. You just sit on the stairs waiting if they will let you know that the jury's outcome is ready and you can come in and listen to the verdict. So that's why I was on my own.
That's really quite, that's quite a thing to face by yourself.
And the next day, that's when everybody came together, like sister, brother, sister-in-law, cousin. That was the sentencing day. And that's when the judge set the minimum of 22 years. And then after that, when we walked out of the court, I was laughing out loud. I know my system was completely destroyed. I was doing the very unexpected kind of stuff in reaction to what was happening. That's why throughout my nearly 29 years of being in the UK, I have made the heaviest investment on myself since the past 7 years.
Yeah.
Because I know I need to be okay, I need to be well, I need to be in a good place because I have a big mission. And still, I haven't, maybe it's just me, but I haven't come across someone in my position, the monster side, the baddie side, to come up and speak. So somebody needs to speak, somebody needs to do something.
Right. And what tools have you used to address the trauma that you have experienced?
I mean, with regards to the personal development journey and the tools we have as coaches, trainers, facilitators, we have a lot of tools. But at the core of it is connection with source and having a supportive circle. That is at the core of it. And then I understand when the next storm is hitting, I understand that it's going to be hard, it's going to take some time, then the dust will settle. Then until the dust is settled, self-care is all I need to do. And when the dust is settled, it's time for me to reconnect with my vision and reconnect with why I'm doing what I'm doing and what are the next few steps I need to take to move me from where I am towards where I want to be. So it's like the practical strategies. It only comes from being grounded, from being true to myself and my core values.
I think what you've said is such an important thing in terms of understanding, actually, of simplifying things when you are going through something that seems unsurmountable. What you've said, where you've said you focus just on that self-care, just on those basic needs, making sure that your needs are met until you feel that you can start to think about
Exactly.
making steps. That's really important. Are there particular tools that you have used to release trauma? And I ask you this specifically because I feel that certainly in my community, there is a tendency for us to just we deal with trauma and we just keep going and we keep moving, and I get a sense that that may be something that you have also experienced. What is the ways in which you have released trauma?
I needed to find out what is that thing that I enjoy. Something that is sweet. Because what I'm carrying is bitter, it's heavy, it's killing me. So I needed to find something that it's sweet, it's nice, something I like. And that was driving on the motorway and music.
Oh, I love that too.
And I drove, oh my God, Desna. Sorry for my car. I don't know how many thousands kilometers or miles I've done, but I have been on that motorway for hours and screaming and crying and praying and silent. And usually my destinations was to Brighton and then pick up 7 stones with each one is one burden, make a prayer, set the intention and throw it into the sea, asking the waves to take it away from me. I have done this 2-3 times a week, 4 months. And it helped. It helped.
Yeah, it's that stillness actually that you feel when you are driving, and it's almost like you're enveloped in the landscape. You're protected in that landscape.
And you see a different perspective. You are not stuck, you are moving. And
Right.
if there is a car slowing down, you can just overtake that and come back to your lane. So you have some freedom. You understand there are obstacles all the way, but you find your way around it in a safe and smooth way.
I love that.
I
I love
hate the feeling of being stuck. Stuckness is no, it's a no-go zone for me.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. So, okay. So once he's inside, what then? What are the conversations that you're having with him? How are you engaging with him?
That also progressed with time. So I
Mm,
remember at the beginning, I was emailing him a lot and I was sending him some exercises in NLP that you can do to manage your emotions or overcome a limiting belief. And he was very polite. And then after a few months, he said, Mom, I'm not ready for this. When I need it, I'll ask you. I'm not ready for it yet. And then were the phases where he was transferred from one prison to another one and getting used to another regime, then having problems on this wing and being taken on that wing. It's a roller coaster in itself. Being in prison in itself is that next way of going up and down all the time.
mm,
And there are different seasons. For example, summertime is a difficult time for him. And when he is struggling with his emotions, I am struggling with finding safety because I'm worried for him. COVID time was a scary time because he
mm,
was spending hours and hours on his own. He also got COVID and he was not having enough paracetamol in his cell. You're doing the time with him in a different way. You want to just be given the permission to drive 3 hours to take a pack of paracetamol and you're not allowed that. So it's crazy how the small details, the most painful ones. He is now older. He is now 27, nearly 28. And recently he took part in a music album recording. He done a Shakespeare play. He done some one-to-one therapeutic programs. When he's engaged in a positive way, I feel at ease. And then we have things to talk about. And what also helps so much is when things are happening at home with the little ones, and I go back to him and I say, speak to your sister or speak to your brother or speak to your son. When
mm.
he knows that he's got that level of trust, respect, authority, that kind of heals the situation. And again, he is now where he is. He's got a phone in his cell, so makes the connection more possible. Well, other times it's to queue up on the landing, and sometimes the phone is not working. So it's really adapting to the changes.
And so your younger children, do they know where he is?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we usually go on a visit once a month and we make it like a picnic. I buy them food, we play music, we talk. Sometimes if we are leaving early, I take the blankets and stuff for them in the car so they can sleep on the way. But they know. And it was very interesting when I heard that my daughter, who's now 11, she Googled his name and read about the case.
Mm.
And I said, what happened was very sad and difficult. All I have to say to you, don't completely believe what the media is saying. There were so much details that was not mentioned by the newspapers or,
Mm.
or the YouTube videos.
Yeah. Okay. And where is he now in his own development? Does he have hope for the future and what his future might look like? I don't want to jump forward to when he's released, but actually, is there hope in his day-to-day activities, day-to-day development?
So there are phases where things will be challenging. There are that. But generally speaking, I see some sense of maturity in him.
Mm.
And he is doing that so beautifully by being human, by not buying into what the culture says about men don't cry and don't open up. And no, he does this wonderfully.
Mm.
And my God, how important that is when prisoners behind bars are becoming the safe spaces for each other. How, when his son at home is doing things that I feel like he needs attention, I speak to my son, and my son speaks to his friend, and his friend writes in his birthday card, in my grandson's birthday card, that I'm Uncle this, and if you like to speak, we can talk. Yeah, and I can advise you of this and that. And this is what I'm doing with my work at the moment, Desna, is to where I am with, again, with trying to understand what's happening is the lack of transitioning for boys from boyhood to manhood. What is missing? The positive male role model. And you see that beautifully happening behind bars when the older prisoner is being there for the younger one, where the prisoners are being that safe space for the newly arrived prisoners. It's wonderful. People don't understand what prison life is like. They come up with the things of lock them in and throw the key away, and they are criminals and they are waste of time and space. All of that, real qualities of humanity behind bars.
Mm.
Real.
Okay. So he has a son.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So when was his son born?
So when he was arrested, his son was under 2 years old.
Wow. Okay.
His son and my youngest are the same age. They go to the same classroom. They play for the same football team.
Oh. And so how is he feeling? How is he traversing being a dad from behind bars?
It brings a lot of guilt, and he tries his best to be there as much as possible. He chooses to top up his phone line rather than buying some extra chicken so that he can speak to his son more. He makes sure that when there is Christmas or Eid or his birthday, that he sorts out some sort of present for his son.
Mm.
He's doing his best,
Mm.
very present. That level of being present for your son, for your child, lots of free men are missing in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's very true. And so how then he has a lot, he has such a rich tapestry of family, people on the outside.
Yeah,
Is he hopeful for his future?
I hope so. Years ago, I'd have said no because the stretch was just too wide. Done nearly 8 years of it. I feel like he now seen some hope.
My question is looking back now from where you are, what do you wish that you had known back then before the incident happened? What are some of the tools or resources or insights that you wish you had known back then that you know now?
It's like the question keeps on taking me back. And I would say the first point is, my God. Wow, sorry, Desna. is to spend more time one-to-one.
Yeah.
And if you go one step before that, choose your partner wisely. My husband is a great husband, he's a great dad. But when you are both not on the same page at some time in your life, kids get lost in the middle.
Mm.
Being in alignment, sharing the values for the family, and work together, be on that same line, will save children from being lost.
Mm.
That was a big part.
Are there things that once you realized that he was at risk that you might have done differently? Are there resources that you have since found out about that you wish were available back then?
No.
No.
I heard another interview from the Prime Minister when he was asked about knife crime. And he said, yeah, we are serious about this and we have employed 20,000 police officers or so.
Mhm.
So yeah, that is the answer. More power, more
Yeah.
police officers, more arrest, more prisoners, building more prisons, employing more prison officers, more, what is it called? Probation officers.
Yeah. And that really resonates with me because that's one of the things I keep saying is as a community, we keep reaching out to the government. And when we reach out to the government gives us the same answer they've always given us. And so I think that we do need to think about as a community how we start to create those grassroots support and what is it that we need. We need to be engaging with each other to understand what it is that we need. And so from your perspective, what would you have liked to have had now that you look back at everything that had gone on? What is it that you would like to have had? What support would you have liked to have had?
I would have loved to have a special professional, like a specific professional staff member in schools who knows the children. And when there's a child who's late or absent and is flagging that there is something wrong, they offer this child some one-to-one, find out what's happening. And if it's something at home, provide some support from a different link for home. And then when this child knows that he's loved and supported rather than being judged and shamed, and when this mom or dad at home knows that there's somebody who is willing to help them, they will calm down. And when they calm down, they can think better. But when the child is late and the teacher is naming and shaming him, and then few months' time he gets excluded, and the mom is shouting and she feels helpless, and the
Such a
dad is
cycle.
giving up, everybody's lost.
Mm.
Everybody's lost.
Yeah, it's such a cycle. And I think sometimes even I shared the story of my experience with my son, and I think we are far too, within schools and even at home, sometimes we're far too ready to highlight the negative about children, and it really sinks into their psyche. And we have to give them a way to win. We have to look for some of their strengths. We have to nurture some of those strengths. We have to give them an opportunity to create. And I think sometimes what happens is that they join in environments that give them an opportunity to create and
Yeah.
just the wrong thing. Yeah. So thank you for sharing so much of that story, so many of the intimate details of that story, because I know it's so massively emotional. What is magical actually is some of the work that you are doing now, how you've managed to turn some of that into inspiration to affect, to change the lives of people in your community, children and parents in your community. Can you tell us what are some of the things that you're working on now? What are you doing now?
I'm very excited about my next project, and it's to deliver a 3 month program to men in prison. And I'm in the phase of getting it accredited. So that's the direction I'm going at the moment, is to go and deliver to men in prison. It's called Manhood from Within, Healing the Boy and Celebrating the Man. It's to promote the mental well-being and providing meaningful ways of rehabilitation and transformation. It's a creative life coaching program that includes wild voice writing, percussion playing, drawing for people who can't read and write, introducing the four masculine power types, and all the tools that comes in alignment with that. And I want it to be 3 months. I want it to be a journey so that it's deeply embedded inside of them and make change, something that they truly believe it's possible. The idea was brought from the States of how people with lived experiences show up in leadership to create changes within the criminal justice system.
Amazing. And you have been working over the last couple of years and delivering various different programs and workshops within the community and within the prison system.
Year 6 students was a very important part of my work because I lived that transition from year 6 to secondary. And then providing parenting workshops for parents with teenage children who are impacted or at risk of youth violence and knife crime. I have worked with women who are in the reintegration phase into the society after doing their times in prison. And under the umbrella of another organization, I worked with men and women in prison in 4 prisons. Yeah,
just leaning into some of the work that you've done in terms of that transition period. I talk about that transition period quite a lot because it's night and day. Primary school, very protective environment. Not for everyone. I know quite a few parents actually that are starting to have issues a lot earlier. But certainly for many people, that transition into secondary school is an enormous problem point. When you are doing with parents in terms of talking about youth at risk, what are the tools, what are the things that we are encouraging parents to think about during that time?
To be honest, most of the participants were mothers. And for mothers, the first thing is self-care.
Yeah.
She needs to be okay. She needs to have enough hours of sleep. She needs to be eating well for her to be okay and be that space of safety, security, and encouragement for her children. So that's number one. Number two is understanding that our children go on their paths. No matter which direction it's going to go, it's important that they know they are loved, they are protected, they are respected, and we are there for them, whichever sides they are going to. And sharing the signs, the flags of what different stages might bring up, what choosing new friends can indicate to, choosing from my experience of what are the things to look out for. And then connecting them to their purpose, why it's important for them. Is it just because he's my child, I want him to be good, or there's bigger than that? And then widening the horizon by doing some visioning. And I make sure that we create a vision board at that last session so that they have something tangible to take back with them when they go home. So it wasn't just a few weeks program and it's forgotten. Something is there in front of them that reminds them of what the vision is, why they're choosing that, and how to take the steps to guide them towards that vision.
And that is the vision for their family and for themselves?
It's all of that coming from yourself as a mom,
Mm.
and then your family, and then even the world, because what we are seeing happening now in the world, maybe it's the biggest reminder of how much we need to have our children as the hope for the next generation of leaders who can make wiser choices for the world.
Absolutely. That's the future, isn't it? Saying that, what is your hope? What are the changes that you want to see?
I have a fantasy. It sounds like a fantasy for now. Maybe one day it becomes true that you don't deal with human mistakes by putting them in cages. You protect people 100%. And when some of these people lose their path, you help them to find the path. You don't lock them up in cages for 19 hours. So that's my biggest thing. And then how to do that is, I'm just seeing myself as a bird flying from one prison to another prison to shift this culture. Because everything around them tells them that they are not important, that they are failure, that they are not needed, that they are extra. And that's not true. They, almost every single one of them, was a victim in the first place. So my purpose, my mission, is to restore respect and that sense of pride inside of them. And how do they do that? By doing good things. And what's rehabilitation? Is to help them do good things. Can we do it differently? Because what you're doing is not working.
Yeah. And it's really present to me that actually that messaging is typically what got them there in the first place. And that continued messaging is what keeps them there. It is really about having a pathway back to contribution. Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Dunia. Thank you so much. For all of our listeners, tell us where we can find you. Where can we connect with you? Where can we see your work and see what's going on? What delights you're delivering out into the universe?
Watch out this phase. My website, which is alifeofchoices.com, and Instagram, LinkedIn, Dunia Shafik, or A Life of Choices.
Fantastic. I wish you best of luck with the program. I will be following it. Absolutely. It's been such a pleasure to have you on, and it's been very touching to understand more about your story, and always inspiring to speak to you and see what you're doing out there. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Desna. I really enjoyed this time with you. Appreciate it so much.